Now, just a little warning before we begin, there will be major spoilers in this video for the first 3 episodes of Andor, so if you have not seen them yet and you don't want anything ruined, it is a really good time to click away. Okay, so at long last, Andor is finally here, and I say finally because, first of all, this show was actually announced several years ago at this point, back in 2018 to be exact. And second, thanks in large part to not wanting to go toe-to-toe with the release of House of the Dragon and Rings of Power, the release date got pushed back a few weeks, though with the promise of now getting the first 3 episodes right away. Which I think was an all-around good idea, especially the getting 3 episodes at once part, because in all reality they felt like they could have and maybe almost should have been one long episode. It just felt like a slow burn, though I don't mean that in any sort of negative way. I very much like and appreciate when a story doesn't rush to the action in order to appease what they think holds the attention of modern audiences, when it instead takes the time to set the stage and trusts its characters and the interactions between them to be interesting enough to keep people watching, which very much happens in this case. Pretty much all of the many characters we come across in these first 3 episodes are good and feel genuine, like real people living real lives in a galaxy far, far away. In fact, this is probably the most real Star Wars has ever felt, which is not meant as a slight against other Star Wars shows and movies, a lot of which are obviously terrific. Just that this is something completely different out of Star Wars, something far more grounded and gritty, even more so than Rogue One was, considering we have the time to see more of the day-to-day routines of people, the workings of the galaxy itself, you could even say. In fact, there's probably going to be some fans who really don't like this show because of that. I'm not going to be surprised to learn some Star Wars fans just find this to be, well, not what they want out of Star Wars, which I get and respect. I too very much love the more fantastic elements of Star Wars, the Jedi versus Sith stuff, or learning about the Force and its mysteries, which I hope we'll see more out of in a show like Ahsoka next year. But for now, this is a refreshing change of pace. It's good to see Star Wars take itself a bit more seriously, you could say, or be a bit more adult. And I mean that rather literally, considering we go into what is essentially a brothel in a red light district. We have implied sex taking place too, and the word shit has been uttered for the first time in Star Wars, which, I don't know, I get why they didn't want to use the word poodoo, but it felt a bit strange to hear that word being said in Star Wars. Either way, this gave us, again, a really good sampling of what the lives of the common folk in the galaxy are really like, what they face on a daily basis, and begins to explain why many will eventually grow tired of and stand up and fight against the Empire. Not that we even technically see the Empire in this, which I thought was kind of brilliant, that we instead just see at first a local corporate security force that is overseen by the Empire, which makes the Empire feel like this large, ominous, looming threat that's out there, like it's so big it can't even be troubled to deal with a smaller system. Going along with this, and maybe the most impressive thing about the series so far, is that it would still be really good without it being Star Wars, or if all the verbal and visual references to Star Wars, or that let us know it's in that galaxy, if they weren't there, the show very much holds up on its own without having to rely on you being a Star Wars fan or knowing these characters and these settings and all of these other things in order to care about what's going on. Which isn't to say fans don't know Cassian from Rogue One, just that a show like Kenobi, for example, very much relied on you already knowing and caring about Obi-Wan and his story beforehand, and that if you don't know anything about him or Star Wars in general before watching it, I don't think it holds up quite so well, though this Andor series so far does. Which isn't to say you can't ever create Star Wars built off other well-known parts of Star Wars, just that it's nice to see something not relying so heavily on member berries or nostalgia that tries to do its own thing first, that initially tries to establish itself as its own unique series. Because we do know more Star Wars-y stuff is coming or will be in the series, we do know the Empire will end up being a huge part of this, and will eventually be going to Coruscant and seeing characters like Mon Mothma and so on. Eventually, or so I assume, this will feel a lot more like Star Wars than it did in these first 3 episodes, but props to it and its creators for not coming out of the box and trying to get us vested in the show just because it's Star Wars, or based on all these things that we know and love already. Props to it for starting out as its own thing, more or less. Another thing that was highly impressive was just how good this looked, the production values. that it looked like we were on real sets and on location for most, if not almost all of it, that it didn't rely on the volume, which is what all the other Star Wars Disney Plus shows have done. Moving on to the story itself now, again, it was a bit of a slow burn, like watching a lit fuse slowly fizzle down to an explosion you know or can just feel is coming. That's the best way I can describe these first 3 episodes. You can just see everything slowly unravel for Cassian. It does a terrific job of showing instead of flat out telling. You know Cassian's in a rough spot in life, not just because he's now wanted for murder, but because he's burnt a lot of bridges with the few friends he has, that he owes all of them money and that he's just trying to survive and hopefully one day find his sister, who we see in those flashbacks. That seems to be his top and pretty much only motivation right now. Though I'm very curious to see or learn more about just what exactly happened to his homeworld Kenari and why he seems to believe his sister is still alive. We know that Imperial records say that an Imperial mining accident happened, and that it's now toxic and everyone died. Even though the planet doesn't seem to be toxic in the flashbacks, at least not enough to kill the kids outright, though maybe they're being slowly poisoned, I don't know. Or maybe, and more likely, it's just all BS to keep anyone and everyone away from the planet in order to stop them from finding out the truth about what really happened there. Anyway, more than likely, and from what we know of Cassian's backstory, his people, resisted by joining a separatist cell when he was 6 years old, as he famously says in Rogue One about how long he's been in the fight for. And his father, and I think pretty much every other adult, we can now assume, was killed, leaving all the children to fend for themselves, as we see in the episodes. And so the Empire, again, just say there was a mining accident, and that it's poisoned so no one looks further into what they really did to the people. All that seems pretty well and good, but what I don't get is that Marva, Andor's adoptive mother, said in one of the flashback scenes that the Republic was coming and that they would kill all the kids for some reason, probably again to hide any evidence, even though the Republic shouldn't exist anymore at this point, that it should be the Empire and the Clone Wars should be over for about 5 years now, if we assume Andor to be about 10 or 12 in this, which he appears to be, at least to me. Now, sure, she could just be calling it the Republic because, well, she still calls it that, or maybe she's a former separatist and still holds resentment towards the Republic. Maybe the timeline has somehow shifted and changed and this is still during the Clone Wars. Or maybe I'm putting it all together wrong and just missing something. Either way, I am a little confused by the timeline here and hopefully it all gets cleared up soon enough. Moving on, I like how the opening of this in many ways parallels the opening of Rogue One, that it starts out with Cassian killing somebody in cold blood, though the big difference this time is he's doing it to save himself. After accidentally killing the other officer, he makes the choice to pull the trigger and kill the other one to hopefully cover for that. While in Rogue One, he's killing someone, an informant, not so much to save himself, but for his cause. It shows how, yes, this is the same character, but there's a long way to go before this guy becomes the one we see in Rogue One. Though we do see what is likely the first step of that journey, when he meets and eventually escapes with Luthen Rael, who we don't really learn much of anything about here in these episodes, but from the trailers and elsewhere, we can assume he is someone in a position of power, maybe politically or maybe the corporate sector, that the Empire has wronged somehow. We've even seen him interacting with Mon Mothma in the trailers, so again, he's likely someone prominent or important. I also gotta say, I already love to hate Cyril Karn, the rather obsessed security officer who takes his job very, very seriously. I enjoyed the sort of collision course with Andor you saw him going down the whole time, and the payoff, the big battle at the end. It was great because it was actually set up extremely well. We knew and cared about all the players involved, which, surprise, surprise, actually adds tension, because action without context, without truly knowing and caring about the stakes, is just pretty explosions on screen most of the time. And so again, I love that the series trusts us, the audience, to have patience and trusts itself to create characters first and to let the story be propelled by them. You can see the individual choices that lead to eventual outcomes, from a guy having a really bad day and trying to work his way out of an unfortunate mess, to a gung-ho young man who believes too much in the cause, leading him to defy the instructions of a superior officer, to a jealous boyfriend trying to remove the other guy from the equation. These are genuine feeling characters with real emotions and real actions. This is a well-written story that doesn't rely on being Star Wars to sell it. This is so far exactly what the franchise needs after the last few series couldn't sell themselves or weren't great, even though they fully embraced being Star Wars and some of its more famous or legendary characters, which isn't to say you can't ever go back and do the tried and true thing of using those great characters and telling more fun and fantastic stories of good versus evil. I do want much more out of that in Star Wars in the future. But it sure is nice to get a little something different, and for it to actually be pretty damn good. Well, that's all I've got for this time. And once again, I'll be selecting some comments on this video to read and respond to on a video over on my second channel, a Let's Talk Some Andor video. I'll probably also be talking more about it over there in a video later today, a more ramble style video. So if either of those interest you, please do go check that out and subscribe to my other channel. Either way though, leave your comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.